So I've recently seen an article by The Critic which says that we should defend British sovereignty by defending the Online Safety Act. And my intention for this video is not to be a hit piece on The Critic, but I do want to go through it and point out how some of their arguments kind of miss what the objection to the Online Safety Act is. To be clear, they are perfectly entitled to have their opinion. This is just my opinion, which differs quite a lot from theirs. Now, in quite a few of my videos, of course, I've asked you guys to let me know what you think about the Online Safety Act. And a lot of people that are actually for the Online Safety Act and support the implementation of it have actually echoed some of the ideas that we've seen in this article. And I think this is a great opportunity to condense it all into one place so I can go through and kind of argue the alternatives. Can Britain make its own laws and decide how it is governed? To extricate ourselves from Brussels took many years and much pain, but once again British sovereignty is under attack. This time the pressure to decide what laws we are permitted to retain comes from not Brussels but Washington DC, and the pressure is intense. Now what The Critic is getting at here is that essentially we've introduced the Online Safety Act into the UK and American companies are kicking off about it. Now the reason why American companies are kicking off about it is that when it comes to the internet, there isn't America and the UK. There is the internet which everyone can access, unless you're places like North Korea, which is a problem within itself. I think we can all agree that that level of restriction is not conducive to a free society. Now what this article is arguing is that essentially America and American companies like Facebook and Apple shouldn't have a say in our laws in the UK when their products and services are directly being governed by the laws in the UK. And to actually work around the UK legislation, i.e. comply with the UK legislation, comes at a cost of privacy for all of its users, which actually violates laws in their own countries. Some 75% of voters support it. Source? No source? No source at all. I'm just jumping in the edit. I've actually managed to find the source. So we had a Reddit post which linked to a Twitter post, and in my last video we spoke about why we don't use Twitter posts as sources. Then I managed to find the website that this Twitter post was referring to, and I managed to actually download the poll that had taken place. So the poll was, this week a law came into force which requires internet companies showing blah blah blah, basically talking about age restriction. Now this poll took place just a couple of days after the Online Safety Act came into effect and before many companies had actually actioned their provisions with things like age verification. Now in the poll we have all of the data of the people that either support it, somewhat support it, neither support nor oppose. You get the idea. You can read. Now the interesting thing is that a lot of people, in fact nearly half of the people that were kind of for it, fall into the somewhat support category. Now the bit I wanted to find out is essentially what question was asked to garner the results for this poll. And if we read a footnote for the poll, it says participants were asked if they believe more should be done to protect children. Now if the question was more specifically, do you think age verification is a good thing? But I can pretty much guarantee, just throwing it out there, that most of the people that said somewhat agree with that more should be done to protect children without the caveat of things like age verification. This is why polls are only relevant when you actually look at the question that was asked. I mean, we can look at all of the public polls that have been done in regards to the Online Safety Act, and nowhere does it suggest that 75% of voters are in favour of the Online Safety Act. In the latest polling, 19 out of 20 voters want to retain it in some form, just 5% want abolition. Well, once again, this information is entirely incorrect. They're suggesting that 95% of Reform voters are in favour of the Online Safety Act, where the actual poll that they are referring to shows that 27% strongly support, 23% somewhat support, which of course is the caveat around the whole ID thing, and the rest of the people either don't know, and that goes all the way down to strongly opposing it. None of this data here suggests that 95%, 19 out of 20 people are in support of the Online Safety Act. And then we can talk about other political parties. Even the Conservatives, which were one of the people that wrote the original legislation, are against the Online Safety Act. Reform are against the Online Safety Act, and even members of the Labour Party are against the Online Safety Act. The Green Party has a good portion of its members which are against the Online Safety Act. However, the Lib Dems are massively for it for some reason. No idea. Once again, I'm not sure where this data is being grabbed from, but it is very inaccurate to say the least. And after we've just gone through all of that data, this poll is now out of date. Support has fallen by 20% across the board for pretty much all of these parties. So as the Online Safety Act, of course, has been in effect now for a couple of months, people are seeing that clearly they're not liking it, or it's limiting their online privacy, whatever it might be, and support is falling. The popularity comes from the assertion of sovereign power in an area that has left parents helpless and the young vulnerable to exploitation. For 25 years, we've conducted an experiment in which we give adults unfettered access to teenage girls. An entire economic sector, one which now dictates terms for trade for many other sectors, has given freedom from liability, and the result is exactly what you would expect to happen when you allow someone to be their own policeman. Geez, the inaccuracies here. Should we go from the start? Parents helpless and the young vulnerable. Parents aren't helpless. If a parent goes to their internet router and then looks at the little tag that's on the back of it, logs into that thing, they can prevent all adult content going through their home router. Parents aren't helpless. Parents aren't being educated. If parents are educated, then we wouldn't need the Online Safety Act. I believe that children shouldn't be accessing naughty content. I agree. I don't believe that the UK government should put a law on everyone in the UK that presents a massive security, data and personal freedom risk in the event that it might possibly perhaps stop a child from potentially perhaps seeing some titties. Because at the moment, the data isn't in favour of the Online Safety Act. Yes, Pornhub's viewership is down. It's also up in all other countries thanks to VPNs. And whilst we're on the topic, if you're looking for a fantastic VPN, make sure you check out Private Internet Access at the link down below. They don't keep any logs, they value your privacy, as you should value your privacy. And with that link or this QR code, you can get yourselves 4 months free and 86% off. Now let's get back to the video. Now, the second half of that there, for 25 years we've conducted an experiment in which we give adults unfettered access to teenage girls. Now, when it comes to adults communicating with underage girls, I'll admit, that is a problem, but we don't need the Online Safety Act to fix it. Of the top 10 at most risk platforms for predator behaviour, all of them have parental controls that can stop children from communicating with strangers that aren't known or approved by parents. So back to my original point, parents should be parents, and parents should be educated. Today, after 2 decades of innovation, there's no space in which British children can find out who they are and express themselves online in reasonable safety. There is. They can even have Facebook if they want to, just have it so strangers can't add them and they can't add other people. In fact, throw a platform at me that your child uses, I guarantee there's options in there to stop your children communicating with strangers. Something extraordinary has happened. It has been introduced with remarkably little fuss or pushback. So 1/50th of the entire UK population signing petitions against it, online marches in streets, tens of millions of people on the internet complaining about it, raising concerns, writing letters to parliamentary figures, actually being one of the most requested government topics for debate in the past 50 years, and you're saying there's been very little fuss around it. Are you sure? It now seems odd that we ever allowed hardcore pornography to be delivered to anyone who typed out a URL, including children. It didn't. Parental controls have existed on routers for many years. If BBC News for just 6 months after each news segment ran a little 30-second thing about how to turn on your internet privacy settings, and internet router or switch providers provided educational packs to parents, we would quell 90% of this issue. Whether it's device level or router level, there are protections that can be put in place to stop your children accessing this content. And insisted all the market externalities were loaded onto parents to grapple with in the form of bewildering firewalls, parental controls and other technical measures. Right, the truth is, the internet is here to stay. If you want to protect your children, you have 2 options. You can turn on your home router internet privacy settings, which literally takes less than 2 minutes, and you can turn on parental controls on their phone or use many of those apps out there like Kids Locks, for example, where you can limit what apps they access, limit what they can access online, all of these other things that exist that are not complicated. These protections exist, but they were never explored before the Online Safety Act. On my phone, on the EE app, I literally set up a guest network in my house for when I have family round that have children, they can connect to that guest network and it's just protected. I'm not some super sciencey tech guy that needed to do that. It was literally on the EE app, which by the way is one of the biggest service providers for internet in the UK, and most people are with the BT network in the UK. It's on the app. You can set up a guest network for kids to access and they can't do anything. They can access YouTube for kids and that's about it. Wander into Mumsnet and you'll see why the Online Safety Act is popular. So I actually checked out Mumsnet and there were obviously people in favour of it, but there was also a lot of people that were concerned by it also. It's also worth noting that when it comes to parents just judging it on the parental factors of it, their biggest concern is going to be their child, not the wider national security of the UK. It's also worth noting that the average parent will post around 1,500 pictures of their child before they're 5 years old on the internet. And around 79% of parents share pictures of their children online in the first place. So I'm not taking anything away from parents here, but we do have to consider that there's other concerns than what mums want on the website Mumsnet. I mean, to be honest, if you can find a cause, there will be people talking about it on Mumsnet. It's just like Reddit for mums. Then one of the next things that the article actually goes on to talk about is basically how the United States is interfering with the Online Safety Act. Now, I'll put it on screen, just slowly scrolling, so you can pause and read it should you so wish. But essentially, their biggest complaint is that how American companies can interfere with laws and regulations in the UK. But what they're not acknowledging in anywhere in this article is that the laws and regulations in the UK are actually affecting the freedoms and privacy of other people on the platform in countries outside of the UK. It's kind of a bit like Wisconsin's Online Safety Act. The way that they want to implement that law would basically require any website to ban all connections for anyone in the world who's trying to access the website through a VPN. Obviously, companies aren't going to do this, but it's a law that has wide-ranging impacts on the entire world. And the same thing applies with the Online Safety Act. We've had so many issues now, for example, with the British government wanting to demand access to our text messages and our iCloud backups, but we are seeing invasions of privacy from our government, and we're seeing things like digital identification, all of these things building up and basically creating a stark picture of where our government is going as a country, and also painting a pretty depressing picture of where we've been as a country. So the reasons why America is kicking off with the UK law fundamentally come down to the fact that the UK law affects these American companies. Also, the UK law takes away freedoms from people in the UK and essentially turns us into a surveillance state. Now, something else that's worth touching on, it says here that opponents of the act claim that censorship is rampant, but this is a dishonest argument, equating age verification with censorship, which removes material from adult view. Refusing a 10-year-old pornographic material is not being censorship. Now, I do agree that the 10-year-old shouldn't be able to access that content, but actually, technically speaking, just on a technicality, that is considered censorship. But let's just kind of move away from the straw man argument a little bit here. If it was just naughty content that was being hidden from children, that argument would stand. And I'll be dead to rights. I'll be like, okay, well, that's bang on and I can't argue that. But a couple of months ago, I did a video and we actually went through a clean internet browser and we showed that articles did not appear and news information did not appear without an account that had verified ages on it. Now, it's not necessarily about gore. It's about the fact that many people do not want to submit their identification. And as a result of not submitting their identification, they will not have access to news media. They will not be able to see or be aware of certain political events because it hasn't just restricted porn. But then we also need to consider feature creep, which is something that we do talk about a lot. And I think it's something that no one can really deny is happening at this point. At the moment, the core goal for it is to basically censor things like adult content. That's what they're saying the core goal is. Now, as a byproduct of that, it has censored other content that isn't adult content. That essentially means that if you don't want to submit ID, you kind of shit out of luck and you don't get access to certain features or content. But what happens in a year, 2 years, 3 years, when the government you don't like comes into power and decides, hang on a second here, we have a way to control the internet. We have a way to basically decide what people do and don't see because of the sheer amount of people that aren't complying with age verification. They know that people aren't complying with age verification. So they know that if they basically move one media outlet into a different category, maybe call them adult content, they can move that goalpost of what is considered appropriate for young audiences. And to be clear, the divide here isn't who's old and who's young. The divide here is who has submitted age verification and who hasn't. The government don't utilise the data of little Timmy's age and 45-year-old Craig's age. They see the data as how many people have submitted their age verification. There's so much more to go on with this article and it is linked down below should you want to go through and read all of the points. They do raise a lot of points in there that I imagine people have varying opinions on. But I think at the very minimum, it's a very interesting topic for discussion. And I think when it comes to like the problems with the Online Safety Act, if I can actually understand what the arguments for it are, I can kind of be a bit more educated when it comes to debunking them or voicing my objections, should I say. And while you're down there, make sure to check out private internet access at the link down below or the QR code here where you can get 4 months free and 86% off. Thanks for watching and I shall see you all in the next video.